Welcome to Downey High School Online, home of the virtual Vikings. I hope you're doing well. It's your favorite wrestling coach, history teacher, and today we're talking about big business in the industrial age, Gilded Age. So when we talk about big business does come with a lot of problems, but it also has turned in pretty much the future of the United States, and a lot of what we do now comes from this era and time. So one of the things about the United States is, and that you may know of, is that we're a capitalistic society. And so capitalism is free enterprise. Business can do whatever they want. And so in a purely capitalistic society, businesses compete with one another. Government is not going to regulate businesses, and they're going to buy each other off, which eventually comes down to, and the government has a term, which you may know of, laissez-faire, which in English means hands off. And the government is not going to intervene with business. Now, this is going to create a couple of problems, and you and your teacher are going to go over those problems. But a lot of these businesses, their main goal is to make money, and they're going to do whatever's necessary. And so, especially in the city, there's no regulations on emissions. There's no trash regulations. Businesses are going to do whatever it takes. And so if, let's say, you own houses or apartments in a city, you're going to rent out to as many families as possible because sanitation isn't a worry. But if you kind of think about today, you're right now, you're thinking, well, that's kind of disgusting. Multiple families sharing rooms, lots of rats, and you're kind of thinking that's disgusting. But now, if you kind of take a look at what we do, and what businesses today are willing to do to make money is, I mean, they want to get more and more people to consume products to make money, and they don't really care about the outcome as long as we're making money. And so this is kind of like an age-old question, now that we're in modern society, is we need businesses in order to keep the economy going, to keep the world going, but at what cost? So businesses, they have an idea, and it comes from Darwinism. So if you know Charles Darwin, he quotes the term survival of the fittest. And from evolution, species evolve by surviving in the environment, and the best genes get passed on, and eventually they evolve. And so only the strongest individuals in a species will survive, and they will pass on their genes. And so right around in the 1800s, when Charles Darwin comes up with this theory, they also come up with a theory in the business world called social Darwinism, and that is also survival of the fittest. But however, instead of individuals, they're going to say businesses. So only the strongest businesses in a market will survive. Other businesses will die out. And this actually leads to companies forming trusts. Now, you're probably thinking, what the heck is a trust? What's a monopoly? Kind of give you kind of in terms is trust monopolies, they can make an insane amount of money. Now, the guy that you're looking at right now is Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is currently the richest man in the world. And thanks to the pandemic and everybody shopping on Amazon and Amazon Prime, he has gained another $40 billion to his wealth. And so his current wealth right now is $185.6 billion. Now, capitalism is great. Capitalism is great because he started pretty much from nothing. It was just a small little store. He ran out of his garage, Amazon, selling books. And eventually he worked his way up into Amazon, the corporate giant that it is today, which sells everything online. You have 2 business days shipping. You also have Amazon stores. And just recently, he's come out with some drones, which eventually that we all believe to think that he will use these drones to deliver his products, which will cut down the shipping costs and cause him to make more money. And so a lot of people are angry about this. But just to go, $185.6 billion. So there's a TikTok user. Actually, I'm sorry, real quick. He has more money than most of these countries here, Haiti, Jamaica. He has more money than some of the third world countries possess their entire economy. That's how much money he has. Just insane to think that this guy has way more money than an entire country. So $12.95 million is what he's paid for in these New York apartments in Fifth Avenue next to Central Park. He actually bought, and as you could see up here, he bought this entire penthouse and also 2 rooms below it, just because he has the money. This is some of the most expensive real estate in the world here in Central Park. He also bought a $24.5 million house in Beverly Hills in Los Angeles, California. He's absolutely loaded. Now, to think about wealth and how much wealth is, there's a TikTok guy, and he actually did a video on if he was able to break down using rice to visually show how much money that is. So 1 grain of rice, as you can see right here, is $100,000. So 1 grain of rice is supposed to represent $100,000. And so this is what $1 billion would look like if it was 1 grain of rice is 100,000. That's a lot. Well, this video is kind of old because this is at 122 billion, and now he has 185 billion. But look at all of this rice, and this isn't just like rice laid on a table. It's a pile of rice. Look how tiny these grains of rice are. This is 122 billion. And so he does this video on TikTok, and he just shows this is his kitchen floor and how much 122 billion is. If you have a visual representation, he actually puts a keyboard into the grain of rice to show just how massive that amount is. And so you're like, that is insane. And now he's doubled that by $40 billion. And so you're thinking, well, I mean, 185 billion, that's a lot of money. When we talk about these tycoons, and we'll get into that, a tycoon, but these tycoons, one of the wealthiest men in the world, equivalent to his money, because of inflation, all that, he would have a total of $450 billion. $450 billion, where Jeff Bezos only has 186. That's how wealthy these guys got in the industrial age. Now, how do they do that? They form trusts. And so trusts, you have corporations. A little bit about corporations is you have a group of people. They run a company. There's the CEO, you might have heard, or the VP, board of trustees, and they decide what the company's doing. Especially during this time, these companies have the same status as an individual. So a company can sue an individual instead of one person. And so with a company that has massive amounts of wealth and resources, they're going to have way better lawyers. They're going to have way better representation than than a regular individual, which makes them pretty dangerous. So during this time period, businesses start to merge together to form trust. So for one example is, let's say we had Google and we had Apple. And so Apple and Google, they come together and they form a trust in order to kind of create a monopoly over business. And so as you guys know right now, Google, Apple, really big in the tech industry. Apple has the new iPhone 12. Every year they come up with a new iPhone, and gradually it's been coming. I mean, the device becomes very, very expensive to now it's totally equaling $1,000. So if you want a new phone, you're going to have to pay $1,000, like a mini computer. And so how a trust would work is if Google, they ended up merging together and they decided we can charge way more for that. And instead of charging $1,000, since we're the ones that make the iPhones, or we make all the cell phones that everybody wants, we're going to charge $2,000. And so they create a monopoly over business. Now, you guys play Monopoly. You guys know that the idea of Monopoly is to go around the board and buy as much real estate as possible. And so when you buy all of the real estate, the game is over, you win. And that's exactly what's happening during this time period. And there's a couple ways that you can form a monopoly over certain products or certain items that people sell or that people need. Well, the first one is vertical integration. So vertical integration is when you control all aspects of production. You're probably thinking, what the heck is production? Production is when you make an item. So you extract all the raw materials, you manufacture, or you produce the product, you make the product in factories, and then you distribute by shipping and selling that product. And so for an example, it would be, let's say our product that our company owns is chairs. We're making wooden chairs. And so for us to have a vertical integration so that we can make the most money is we are going to extract the wood ourselves. We're going to go to the forest. We're going to chop down the trees, and then we're going to send them to our own factory. And at our own factory, we're going to make the chairs ourselves. So in this factory, we make all the chairs using our own wood, and then eventually we're going to ship the chairs out and we're going to sell them in our own stores. Now, how come this is beneficial to a business? Well, instead of a company going to a company and buying the raw material, they have to sell it at a higher price so that they can make profit. So instead of buying it from someone who owns the wood, we're just going to get our own, and that way we only have to pay for the cost. We're not paying to help another business out. And so this is what certain industrialists, and even we could say even Jeff Bezos does today, where they have vertical integration. Now, another form of integration is horizontal integration. And so horizontal integration is buying out competing companies to control a certain industry. So with vertical integration, you have the production, the up and down, right? Manufacturing, or the extraction of raw material, manufacturing, selling. But with horizontal integration, you buy one of those levels out. So an example of this would be like Chick-fil-A buying out Raising Cane's. Everybody likes Chick-fil-A or Raising Cane's because they sell a really good chicken sandwich or chicken nuggets, whatever it is. Well, if Chick-fil-A buys out Raising Cane's, they can up their price in the chicken sandwich, which could be now like I think $8. They can make it to 15. So for our chair idea, for us to be successful in our vertical integration, we would buy out all these stores that make chairs, IKEA, Ashley Furniture, or Target, whatever store. We buy all those stores that sell chairs. And now we can sell this chair at whatever price. So a chair that could be $50, now that we own all the stores, we can charge whatever we want because we have no competition. So what's one of the great things about capitalism is that we can sell products get sold at a fair price because Google has a phone, and Apple has an iPhone. Well, if they charge too high, more people are going to buy the Google phone. So they kind of balance out. But when you have horizontal integration, then it doesn't matter how much the phone is. I mean, I can charge whatever I want for the phone. Now, some of the guys that did this, okay, tycoons are what they used to call the industrialists that owned all of business. One of the first guys that we're going to talk about is John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller, born in a very large family, grew up in Ohio. He started at age 16. His father was a salesman, but he started at age 16 as an assistant bookkeeper. And from there, he got into the business of oil refinery. And oil during this time period was used for lamps and for lighting purposes. And eventually, he starts his own company called Standard Oil Company. And Standard Oil Company becomes one of the wealthiest companies, one of the very first companies to reach $1 billion. And this was during the 1800s. So that's way more than what it is now. So he formed Standard Oil Company, and in order for him to make as much money as possible, he uses both vertical integration and horizontal integration. So for oil, he owns all the drilling sites. Then he gets extraction of the raw materials. Then he owns the manufacturing of producing the oils and putting them in barrels. And he also owns the railroads to ship those oil barrels out. And by the time at his company starts for his 15th year, he owns 90% of the world's oil. And so for there, he can charge whatever he wants for an oil barrel. And so this is especially crucial. Oil is especially crucial for the United States to grow at this time period because of the automobile, because of railroads. And so he's actually, thanks to Ida Tarbell, he's very, very criticized on his business practices as he starts buying out companies left and right so that he can have a monopoly. So as you're looking at this picture, and this is a political cartoon from the 1800s, you see John D. Rockefeller, and he's standing on an oil drum. And an oil drum is what they use to store oil. And as you can see, he's dressed as a king. The coat's made of money, and he has a giant crown. This is kind of showing that he's an authoritative king. As you can see his face, not very happy. He looks mean. So they're showing that he's a ruthless businessman. Another political cartoon, you have the Standard Oil barrel drum, and it's some sort of monster, and it's taking over politics. It's taking over the United States. As you can see, he's very, very criticized as a tycoon. Next man we're going over is Andrew Carnegie. Now, I actually like Andrew Carnegie. He was also kind of a ruthless businessman. However, his story, awesome. Grew up in Scotland, and he grew up very, very poor. He was the son of a sheep farmer. He comes to the United States, particularly Pittsburgh, California, and he starts working his way up, works at a railroad, eventually becomes a manager, and starts his own business. And eventually, he owns Carnegie Steel, and he makes a fortune. And so Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't know if you guys know me, but that is one of my favorite football teams. And the Steelers are named after Pittsburgh town because that was a steel making town. And so he makes a giant fortune, one of the wealthiest men in the world. And by 1900 he has 20,000 employees, one of the largest organizations, one of the wealthiest men in the world at this time. And the very last tycoon we're going to talk about is Cornelius Vanderbilt. And he invests in transportation. He was born into a very wealthy family already, and he ends up flipping his inheritance, and he doubles his inheritance as his father left him about $500 million, and he doubles that by the time he as the time he builds his own railroad empire. So one of the things about him is he would force competitors to buy him out. And so one of the things is he actually needed a railroad company, and he actually had a railroad company in Panama, and he wanted another company to buy that railroad out. And so the company's like, no, we don't want to do that. We have a good thing going. So he said, fine, that's fine. I have connections in the Panama Canal, and now you can't use that transportation site. And so the company starts losing money, and eventually they have to buy him out. So he uses really ruthless business practices to grow his business. And at one time, he owns 85% of the railroad. Now, why is that so important? Well, the railroad transforms the United States. So think about Amazon Prime and why Amazon Prime is so good. You have 2-day shipping. If I order something, let's say I need a new dog toy for my dog. If I need to get this dog toy and he starts chewing up my couch, I can get it in 2 business days. So when you own the railroad during this time period, for the very first time in U.S. history, you can go from New York to San Francisco in a week. That's never been done before. And everybody ships things through the railroad. So he has a monopoly on the railroad and can charge whatever he wants for a transportation fee, causing him to be very, very wealthy. Now, one of the things that you have to know is captain of industry. Captain of industry is someone, an entrepreneur, who uses their wealth to influence society in a positive way. John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, they created multiple foundations to help people, especially society, during this time period. They had a lot of schools named after him: Carnegie Library, Rockefeller Center, all these different things named after him because they've donated a lot of money. And actually, Andrew Carnegie, by the time he died, he only had about 30% of his wealth, and he donated it all. And so when you think of captains of industry, you want to think of the helpful Honda dealers. These guys go through California, and they look for people that need help by donating gas or giving them cleats. And so those are the helpful Honda dealers. But we also have what is called the robber barons. And so robber barons are those entrepreneurs who become rich through ruthless business practices, doing whatever they can to make money, regardless of who gets hurt. And as you can, when we get through to the union labors, you're going to talk about with your teacher the types of working conditions that many of these workers were going through, as not having a lunch break, working 20 hours a day, only getting 4 hours of sleep, no medical insurance. So if they would get hurt on the job, they'd get fired. If they lost a limb, the company wouldn't do anything. And so a lot of this was happening during this time period because of laissez-faire. Hands off, the government is not going to intervene. And so robber barons, you kind of want to think them as Mr. Krabs. As Mr. Krabs only wants money. He's going to do whatever he can. He treats SpongeBob horribly, and Squidward doesn't get paid that much. Okay, so know the difference between captain of industry, robber baron, and those 3 tycoons. I'm Mr. Acevedo. Hope you had a wonderful day at Downing High School. Thank you so much.